Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be back with everyone. Jeff promised 45 minutes, and I think I have 4 or 5 hours worth of talking to do. So I either talk fast or we go over a little longer, but we'll do our commitment to keep it at 45 minutes today. Three themes that we want to talk about today. The first one is we did a survey in June and into July to talk about our recruiting practices, or what are your strategies in those areas, and we have some great data to show you there. Then the second theme is we want to talk about how onboarding is going, and then what is this new normal looking like as we bring people on board. And then the final piece is probably what we hope to share with as many people as possible out there is what we're seeing for the budget strategies for 2021. As you know, I think we're on our 20th year of doing a comp forecast, looking at budget, merit increases, salary range movements, what are the hot jobs, what are the benefit moves. And this year, we're relying a lot more on our clients to give us information as we look at what we need to do for next year. I'll make a pitch later in the program to talk about where we need your help. But again, I think the biggest benefit the HR practice can do for their credit unions is to make sure we get dollars and recognition in the right hands as we go forward, when we're all looking for ways to make sure we're keeping expenses under control. So let's go through the survey first. Okay, so we looked at the survey. Our client base is going to be those larger credit unions, 100 million and up. So a lot of the data that you're going to be seeing from this survey comes from 500 million and up. But we always do cross tabulations to see if there's a difference between a large credit union and a medium-sized credit union on how they're approaching things. And so we can safely talk about today, when we talk about a theme, it's really across the board from $100 million and up. So when we look at employee counts, you can see that 100 to 300 is kind of the sweet spot for this survey. But again, when we look at the cross tabulations, the larger credit unions in terms of employee counts are not doing anything significantly different. So the big question we start with is 69% of credit unions said they're going to have less or equal turnover compared to last year. So when you go back to 08 or 09, you looked at employee surveys, employee opinion, employment engagement surveys, and we heard things like, I'm fine, head down, nose to the grindstone. I don't want to make any waves. I just happy to keep my job. And then in 2010 and 2011, it became, I'm okay, but my friend next to me, he really has a problem. He's not happy with his pay, or he really thinks he's looking else if we don't change some of the HR practices. And then ultimately, obviously, we addressed that, and then we had the supply and demand of the forecast said we were going to run into that, and the retail environment did. And we're kind of back in that same situation. Is the supply and demand is still there. The same issue of, I think the unemployment last time we quoted you guys was 42% of hotel workers, hospitality, and food services are unemployed right now, but it's only 3% for financial services. So that means we're still going to be hiring people. And I know if I did a quick poll, I know everyone has job openings. So it's not necessarily increasing the employee count, but just natural transition. So the rule of thumb, it's been consistent in my career, 30 to 35% annual turnover. So if you have it in the teens, high five, that's great. If it's lower than the teens, that's awesome. But if you're in this round, this is kind of what the norm we see out there. And that's continued this year, believe it or not. So one of the things we were worried about is in March and April, we had a lot of headlines in all of the press on, all these retailers were doing special programs. Amazon was, increasing pay, doing hazard pay, increasing commitments to employees. Walmart did a big buzz. And all of a sudden we said, well, maybe, our credit union employees have a lot of the skill sets that would be very comparable. Are we going to lose people to those folks? But when we did the survey, look what happens. The traditional retail financial services is where we're losing most of our people. And that retailer's at 8%. We're going to keep monitoring this. It maybe goes into the teens, but again, making sure you're competitive with the banking world and competitive with your fellow credit unions is going to be probably the best bet when it comes to making sure we're looking at retention issues. If you're still actively looking, what are you looking for? Where are the openings? So we're actively hiring, and I think this number is a little low. I do think that every day this market changes. And as I've told before, the worst day for an HR person is when
The next day or Monday.
you know, what's on my phone this morning in terms of messages or text as we break up these days over text and things. But again, only 1 out of 5 Critians are postponing new hires, and then only 7% said there's not a need right there. But you know, I again, the way the mortgage business is going like crazy for a lot of people, the deposits are flowing in. The retail loans are kind of up and down depending on where we are in the country, that we still think this will track pretty true. What departments are increasing? You can see mortgage was predicted. Technology, as we move people or keep people in a stay at home mode, making sure that we've got them supported well. And actually, we've talked about this before, is everybody has to be a help desk these days. Making sure that members that are not a technology astute or acquiring those digital channels and using them for the first time are going to need some help. Branches at 12%, and then accounting and then lending, consumer lending, 2.4%. Kind of the anecdote that I'm hearing out there is people are moving a lot of consumer folks to the mortgage operation. They understand the general concept of, credit procedures and underwriting procedures and kind of the rules of it. It's just a different product, so they kind of fit nicely. And then we got this question or concern that came from our recruiting practices. Are we getting a lot more questions when people are relocating and moving jobs about what the COVID-19 specific benefits are going to be? And it only registers 6.5% now. And again, depending on the length of this pandemic, you'll see that increase, but hopefully we can keep that under 10%. That won't, when we present that offer and we present that we're a safe and sound organization, that will be enough to keep people comfortable in what we're doing. So one of the things that we hypothesized as an industry in March was, are we going to use more testing because we can't do internal? We're going to do virtual interviews, but are we going to use more testing tools? And testing tools like skills tests, logic tests, behavioral interview questions, personality traits, those types of things. And what came back is really nobody's really changing their formula that much. So what happens is people still want to probably look at that in-person interview, delayed it, or reluctantly moving on, but we haven't seen the behaviors change on how we're bringing people on board. Is it taking longer, shorter? And you can see that it's about the same time. The longer than normal category there, 1 out of 3 hires, is simply that last piece. We want to have an interaction with them personally and see how they'll fit with the culture. We're going to talk about this a little later. What we don't want to do is create 2 workforces. A pre-COVID and a post-COVID. And these people, we're trying to have a consistency of service, consistency of culture. We're going to have consistency of DNA, yet we're kind of changing the rules of how we onboard them. And is that going to make a situation where they never knew the old culture? Mm-hmm. In theory, we could have people that have never been to the home office or the main branch going forward. And that's just boggles my mind that we're going to say that person's going to deliver the exact same service and the exact same care for their fellow employees, their colleagues, and the member, because they haven't seen us in action. The biggest thing, I think, a credit union industry, kind of our secret sauce, so to speak, has always been what? Mentoring, coaching, on-the-job training, watching us do our things. Those stories of where we go out of the way to help a member, and then all of a sudden, how do we get that into the onboarding process to make sure that's part of our culture? Have we seen more resumes? And it's kind of about the same, a little bit normal. You can imagine where we're seeing resumes from our practice. We're seeing a lot more bankers come over in those mid-levels, technically astute, sharp individuals. So it is an opportunity to perhaps upgrade and expand the type of candidates you might want to go after because of those situations. And then finally, when we get to that point where we want to do the new hires, how long do you want to postpone? And right now it's case by case. If it's a critical need, we are trying everything possible to get them on board. If it's something that is more of a strategic and a long-term initiative, we're willing to wait. But, it's really case by case. So there's no definitive way we're looking at how long or if we want to postpone new hires. So when we look at hiring resuming, what's the process going to look like? And it's going to be a hybrid. There's no question that people are gravitating towards this virtual, screening or those first part of the process. I think we're emphasizing our safety and soundness. I think we're emphasizing, and we'll talk about that in a little bit too, that the more you can kind of set the stage for you're going to be a safe environment to work out. We're going to work with employees and new employees to make sure, family situations are taken care of. If you're feeling safe, if we have to be in the public eye, so to speak, that we're going to take care of you. And then finally, the Zoom meetings are definitely happening a lot more. And what's interesting about that is we're getting better at that. So I know some people, they kind of stage their background, and some people
I'm on a beach, trust me.
yeah, because you can do all those goofy things. And Jeff's little kids, they don't come in till about minute 35 of our meetings. So
absolutely.
They're awesome D. Hilton and little employees.
John's free employees, that's what.
but what we're seeing is, the point of the story is, people are kind of letting their body language become more natural now. So in a meeting, when I could look and see that, the hands crossed or the eyes roll, and I said, okay, I'm not connecting. I got to try a different thing. At the beginning, everybody was not attuned to that, but now we're getting to see that. And I think that's so important for a manager, whether it's an interview or we're doing a team meeting, is to make sure that we're looking to make sure we're all those nonverbal cues that were so powerful to making sure we got messages across, but we're getting people to be more natural now. So every month, I think we'll get better at that.
And I think one of the biggest indicators for me is that at first, when we transitioned to this Zoom type of process, there was always a 5-minute period of, no, you go ahead. No, I'm sorry, you go ahead.
What?
No,
what?
no,
what?
your turn. Yeah.
No.
And we've gotten a lot better at that. We were able.
I still stink. I will step on anyone.
Walking through that process.
Yeah.
So moving forward, when we kind of look at the realities that we're in now with working remotely, and how are we going to bring in these new employees that are going to have a different experience from our perspective anyway? And we'll kind of talk a little bit further about that as well. So we wanted to ask the credit unions, going forward, what was going to be the plan? Are they going to change these jobs to working remote 100% of the time, a fully remote position? And for the most part, the majority said, no, we're going to be bringing these individuals back. However, I think the real story here is almost 40% are at least considering it. And we saw a very clear indication, a very clear trend that as asset sizes increased, so too did the potential of offering these remote positions.
Morgan Stanley's CEO did a interview with Bloomberg like second week of July, and said 95% of his thousands of workers were at home and it's working awesome. You ask him today, he goes,
about that.
Yeah, well, let me back off of that statement a little bit, because again, the camaraderie, the knowledge, the culture may or may not be there. So in our environment, we thought that would be a strategic win, is that, hey, maybe we can look at space requirements differently, smaller footprints when it comes to back office, different locations. But every month that goes by, we're seeing why some of that was cultural and collaborative, and why it was not such a bad thing.
And I thought you brought up a great point at one point in time, that we're looking for those big impact things. So the little one-offs of remote positions and such, but actually looking at the big picture of how remote work can help. In a lot of cases, it's kind of individual, but as long as we can take into consideration those bigger picture perspectives, we have an opportunity in some cases there. So we wanted to ask also, looking forward, those that were going to be changing these positions to the remote, where would they be looking? And for the most part, it's going to be still a local candidate, even if the position is remote. But we are starting to cast a larger net into a bigger pond. That is both a pro and a con, because as you cast that bigger net, you're potentially getting access to talent that you didn't have in the past. The other side of that is that other industries, other companies, other organizations are doing the same thing. So that big competitor that wasn't in your backyard previously may actually be now in your playground, playing in your sandbox, looking for that talent. So it's definitely a double-edged sword here, but it is unique to see the potential that we're expanding that net of talent. So invariably, about 60% of the jobs are not going to be able to be done remotely. And we're talking about retail, we're talking about warehouse, manufacturing, things along that nature, which requires a physical person to be in there. This also kind of brings up the perspective of the back office as well. If you have individuals that need to be in there verifying deposits or verifying the mail that comes in, they can't do that remotely just yet. So we are looking at the potential of a lot of jobs are going to have to transition back and go through that.
What about a Ford assembly line?
Oh yeah, we can do that remotely. Just send me the bolt.
Well, FedEx will help us. You do your piece and then you send it to Ohio and then they'll send it to Florida. I'm sure
we'll build the car. We got this thing. One way or the other, you'll get it. Only color you can paint it is black, though. That's it.
Okay. Our Ford truck will cost $3 million by the time we're through with it.
So the other piece of this as well is that you do have leaders that are trained and established leaders, but they deal with things charismatically. Is that going to translate into a virtual world? Are they going to be able to maintain that type of connection with their team if they're not there on a day-to-day basis, if they have to actually expand that out?
You have those managers that just have that special gift, those special competencies of interacting with people one-on-one in small groups and, having people run through walls for them. And the technique, if you observe that, it's the contact, it's the humor interaction, it's the water cooler talk, it's the lunch, it's the happy hour, or whatever it might be. And yet now we go virtual or it's a phone call and it's not translating yet.
Yeah. And I think it's going to be one of those things where the skills do have to increase. It's the proverbial, we've been skipping leg day at the gym and now we're having to use something that we haven't really used in the past. And we're having to readjust that. And just recently I read a study that the preliminary results are kind of showing that through this process, strong relationships, the communication has actually increased. However, weaker relationships or relationships that don't have quite the strength they did have decreased exponentially. So understanding how that interaction is playing with your individual relationships is going to be a big part of moving forward in the remote kind of world.
That's kind of interesting. If you're an HR and OD person and you're coaching that first-time manager how to be a boss, so to speak, and you're saying, I don't believe in management by walking around and slapping people, but hey, good job. You catch them doing something right. But the idea is that if you're an introvert and you're not good at it, and at least when we're in the office together, you had to go by the office and at least say, hey.
Mm-hmm.
And now at home, it's like, now I have to make a call. Ugh. I'll wait a little bit. And then, unless a fire breaks out, a problem breaks out, then you're making that contact. So folks, when I think an underserved or forgotten class in this whole situation or the new normal is going to be making sure your first time managers understand what it means to be a true manager with true competencies in this environment. And you can't, because we don't want anybody that's off-site to feel neglected or on an island, right?
And if you think back to some of the symposium information that we talked about in the past, that younger generations, or actually older generations, if your boss was talking to you, you were doing something wrong. Younger generations, if your boss isn't talking to you, you've done something wrong. So making sure that you're maintaining that good connection and making a personal connection with them. So through all of this, the good news is that going remote was better and faster than anybody could have anticipated. It wasn't so much of a technological revolution that we needed. It was more of a technology implementation. We had the technology, we had the capabilities. We needed to be able to flip the switch to see how this went. The downside of that is it doesn't mean that everything is great. And I think, John, you did a great point about the Discover cards, how the employees were actually coming in together. And they said that less than a third, they surveyed their employees, less than a third of them actually want to work from home permanently. Although most of them would like the flexibility to do it sometimes.
Yeah. And
Discover Cards has actually said, okay, we're going to be able to provide that for you. So it's an interesting perspective to see that maybe working remote 100% of the time is not the best option in some cases.
So, for our HR and OD folks out there, your job is keeper of the DNA, keeper of the culture. And as we bring these folks in and your senior management team and your board have done a great legacy job of creating that culture. And we've had this consistent way of we've assimilated people in and it's not there.
Mm-hmm.
and so we send everybody out into the field, and hopefully they do their job, and they come back and the member experience is at the same levels, we expect it to be at, but it can't unless we modify or really reinforce that frontline manager.
Mm-hmm. And this is a good opportunity to remind you that it's now is a good time to do those employee surveys. Get the pulse, get the opinion, get the understanding of exactly what your employees are going through, how they feel about the situations. The caveat to that, of course, is your standard survey thing. If you're not willing to move on those or can't move on the information that comes back, would you say it's not even, it's better not even to do the survey in that case, because their opinion is not heard?
Well, one of the things that we're doing for our clients is we're going back to 08 or 09, the last once in a lifetime financial crisis, as we've pinned it, and looking at degradation or dilution of the of the member experience, based on the uncertainties that were out there at that time. And, there were some quirks. I mean, we can't rest on our PR laurels from the trade associations that we're the best providers in all cases. And there was a dip. And then what's more important is, what did we see in 9, 10, and 11 as it came, get back to levels? What we're trying to monitor is, you got everybody at home. And so, especially in the contact center, what I'm hearing is, okay, technically we're doing the job. Technically we're meeting our response times, but there's a lag. And, the anecdote is, I'm at my station, I'm working, but let me just go put that one load of clothes in the dryer before, everybody gets home. And that's the time, the member calls.
That is the exact moment every time.
It's going to happen. So again, one of these, what in a business or industry where we do have benchmarks, we have expectations to serve that member. This is why the collaboration work in the office might be, what we're going to strive to get back to, and whatever this new normal is.
And so to that point, I think we're kind of looking at something a little bit more of a hybrid future, where we have the opportunity to work remotely as well as working at a location, having that flexibility to kind of go through there. And going back to that same Discover article that we were talking about, they talk about having customer service agents that would normally have gone through about 6 weeks of actual in-class training. Now they're having to do that completely remotely. And having them brought up to speed and caught up as quickly as those that went through that process, how can we expect them to do that? So we either have to look at how we're onboarding and how we're training and really refine that towards the potential that a lot of these positions, it may be the new normal, to use that cliche of that they will be a remote type of position. So that gives us really the opportunity to look at new ways and new perspectives of this. And I'm probably going to have to turn John's mic off of this one, because he'll never let me live this one down. At a previous life at a large financial institution,
you can say the name.
I'm going to say the name.
You can don't have to protect.
No, it's going to be financial institution.
Okay.
We had a team of 5.
We can't go viral if you don't start some controversy.
Oh, that's right. At least at one time in every webinar, we have to dig on somebody somewhere, don't we?
Okay, we'll keep it generic.
So we had a team of 5, and 3 of those employees were in 3 different states. And you could clearly see that the ones that were local, the ones that were at the home office, were actually increasing faster. Their skills were being developed faster. They were getting on board quicker. So I looked at it as this is an opportunity. We have to reevaluate how we're going through this, because to your point, those daily interactions that I was having and my team was having there locally, those that were remote were not having them. So, and this is where John's never going to let me live this down. I created a weekly meeting that was called "What's Good for the Goose is Good for the Gander."
Oh, I hate that title.
He hates that title, but it was an internal joke. It was an internal kind of gag, and it went along with the concept of the goose was the financial institution and the gander was us.
Could you draw that on the screen?
We're not going to do acronyms on this either. It's a poor use of the proverb. Okay, I understand it's the wrong translation, but it was an internal at the time. Not every idea is going to go into the history books. But what we did is it was an optional meeting every week to say, okay, guys, let's talk about what was good for the goose. So what was good for the financial institution? And we would talk about the successes that we had, the things that we had done right, the things that had gone well, conversations that we'd had with the executive team, as well as if you found a better or a faster way to do something that we are already doing. This gave a very informal opportunity for saying, hey, if you move this box over here and copy and paste into there, it sorts everything right. So you don't have to go through this whole resizing thing. And it would save time. It's maybe something that those people wouldn't have found out previously. So we kind of created our internal culture surrounding this little call. And what was once an optional call suddenly became, hey, are we doing it this week? Are we continuing on with that? And the other piece of that, to kind of maintain the culture that we had at the organization, was that we did what's good for the gander. So that means that, okay, what happened this week that you want to praise? What happened that was really good? So if you had somebody that went above and beyond for you, let's call them out. Let's talk about that and what they did. So if Janet down in payroll really circumvented the red tape, got to where you needed, let's do that. Internally, we had this other system that was called the WOW points. And I didn't make up the name on that one. That was an internal one. And it was kind of like your credit card points, where if you had 50,000 of those points, you could buy that pencil topper you had your eye on. However, it was an internal thing. So an employee could send you WOW points and thank you for that. So we were able to combine our group and say, okay, we're going to thank Janet down in payroll. Everybody agree. It funnels through me. We'd send the WOW points there, and she got entered in to win. So we actually had people that said, you guys are so tight-knit, so involved in this. We really want to be a part of what you're doing. So we created and established that culture that really said something. Even though most of my team was remote, those team members caught up to speed very quickly, and we created this very tight-knit community amongst the team.
You bring that to the credit union space, and you look at a contact center, and everybody has what they like and don't like about their software and the system that they're using. So somebody that goes through a virtual onboarding learns, the 10 different core transactions that might happen on the phone, and then they get number 89 variation of that, and just not to be able to talk to the person next to you. Mm-hmm. So the shortcuts, and as goofy as it sounds, even acronyms, every culture creates their own set of acronyms. And so at a meeting where the new person's there, and you're the senior grizzled vet, and you say, hey, ABC means mm-hmm. This, and as opposed to admitting that you don't know it, which is always embarrassing to a new person, that we just get them up to speed. Mm-hmm. So the quote we have up on the screen is just simply, this is a financial services company. And just think of all the businesses, whether it's public accounting or wealth management or, insurance type concerns where you need new blood to come up through the organization, and mentoring is what works. So not being able to shadow works. And mm-hmm. so some of that might be going away.
And providing opportunities to at least supplement some of that information to be able to move them forward is a good opportunity.
So I know a lot of our clients have mentoring processes, but kind of what Jeff talked about, it is former establishment is just an extension of a mentoring process, mm-hmm. quite frankly.
Exactly.
But I have to ask you, you were always a top 5 employee in that group, right?
Of course.
And there were how many employees?
5.
Okay. I thought so.
Hey, it's good to be top. That's my stuff. If we have time at the end, I'll tell you another story about that, but we'll continue on with I'll digress.
Okay. So when we look at continuing this idea of what a hybrid is going to look like.
So basically kind of continuing on with that, the time spent working remote as well as time spent, kind of doing the same process of what we were talking about, establishing times for the team to come together, to collaborate, to bring new ideas, to say what is working for them, what's not working, what should we move forward with, and how things are going. But keeping it open and honest and being able to have that conversation is going to be important. So one way or the other, even if it is coming together remotely, setting a time apart, kind of doing office hours, so to speak, so you have access to either the management team or the team as a general, or looking at that kind of hybrid where you're working remotely some days and then other days you come in and do collaboration with the team.
Yeah. And again, can't stress enough, I think this is going to be a great tool for frontline managers, first-time managers, and even kind of that manager that's not very good in situational changes, but just has one way to do things. So if we can support them with some of these ideas, I think that really helps our organization.
Mm-hmm. You have tools that are available. It's just a matter of probably finding some of those tools and thinking outside the box on some of the pieces as well. So we wanted to look at, okay, so we have this remote work potential. We've got people that are being hired right now. We're not, for the most part, halting hiring. So what are we doing to onboard these individuals? And for the most part, pretty much the same thing. There's no real changes to the curriculum as far as what the survey is showing. Those are reported, except for the fact that the delivery vehicle is a little bit different. Where one of them, we're looking at, okay, we're going to train them, give them what they need, and then we're going to do additional training once we can get past this working remotely. So that's kind of looking from the perspective of that this will all be over soon. We'll get them back in and catch them up to speed at that point in time. So that kind of means that we need to maybe refine or reevaluate how we're going to be onboarding people. So when you go through that process, we just want to point out that it is a two-part process. You have the pre-hire experience and you have the post-hire experience, or if you just want to call that the employee experience. So first you're having to measure and make sure that your brand, what you're projecting to the public, what they're seeing and how they're seeing that kind of stuff. And two, the recruiting process. How are your recruiters going through it? Where are they finding them? How often are they maintaining contact and touching base?
Yeah, we know if you make an offer letter, there's a correlation. The longer you go from them accepting to they start and there's not context, there's a consequence.
Absolutely. I don't like being ghosted.
They can wash out before they get there.
Absolutely.
And that's real consistent in all the research.
And I think one of the main points, kind of the little bullet points down at the bottom we'll chat about here, I think is a great way to go around it. And I don't think it's used quite as much as it should be, even though it's very simple. And then with your looking at the employee experience or the post-hire, you want to talk about the orientation meetings that they're going to have on through the onboarding. So they've signed, they've started their first day. What does the orientation look like? How are things going to shape up? As well as the training, because the training may need to be reevaluated. How are we going to train these people, these employees, to be able to get them up to speed? And the piece that I say that it isn't used quite enough is that welcome email. Something very, very simple that when they sign on and they say they're ready to join the organization, have the manager send out that email to the team and even the company in some cases, talking about, we are really proud and happy to have you on the team. Here's a little bit about you. This person graduated from this university or anything along that line. Make that personal connection. Show them that not only are they very lucky to be joining your team, you're also very happy and lucky that they're joining your team as well. So very small and easy things that move forward. Set up a team greeting when they actually start on their day. Make sure that they know everybody, have everybody kind of introduce themselves very quickly and briefly. The big thing here is making sure that this is kind of normal. This is the next phase of what we've been doing. This is just how we onboard and this is how we talk about things.
So when let's kind of combine these to kind of continue that thought. We know there's going to be more questions from candidates about your safety practices and your virus practices. So in that pre-hire, if they can be connected to some of your internal communication to say, hey, we're doing these things to keep everybody safe, I think that's going to create the comfort level that you want to see and gives a better chance of them showing up on first day.
Absolutely. And you do have to kind of reevaluate that. We are looking at different things, but I think, John, you made an extremely important point, and I think it's the third bullet on this one. Be careful not to create those two workforces. If you're onboarding somebody and saying, I'm so sorry that you're having to do this through Zoom, we're going to get you in here pretty quick. You've already started an us and them. There's already started being a delineation of this is not normal. This is outside the normal spec.
And I personally just worry about that of back in the day, and back in the day means March.
Yeah.
We did things, it was totally better back then. It was totally different. And the idea is that, I said it earlier, people literally could maybe work with you 6 and 9 months and never see another one of a colleague, mm-hmm. or see the brand, the main office or something. So that's something we have to be really protective about, and that's also something we want to see in the employee engagement research is separating the two teams, so to speak, and seeing if there's differences in satisfaction levels and engagement levels and those types of things. It's something very important to monitor for at least a year.
Yep. Staying on top of things, understanding that there may be issues here is going to be part of the battle, and then setting up a plan in place to be able to take some actionable steps to either curtail this or move it forward or fill in those holes where we need.
I didn't want to speed over bullet two, but IT is your friend.
Oh, yes.
It's always been your friend, but especially one of the things that will get you a low employee engagement is just having the physical setup. We did such a good job of getting everybody home. And I know a lot of our CEO clients were really committed to spending the dollars, making the investment to make sure everybody at home had the equipment. And again, there is an investment to make sure we have a good member experience. So we had top-notch equipment, but nobody was hesitant to get that in the field. But again, this IT, commitment to make sure that you've got good, strong people and you're keeping them to make sure they're understanding, because really they're juggling two things, right? We're doing two operations, this virtual operations and this the traditional, whether it's brick and mortar or digital.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's key part of the HR team.
Yep. And making sure that the IT team understands the why behind some of the things that they have to accomplish. So when you look at it, you're going to be dealing with different situations, even if you projected on the front end that, hey, this is normal. This is what we do every day. As far as a new employee understands, is that this is how you do business. This is how you onboard people. They are going to have some fears. They are going to have some reservations and hesitations about that. Keeping those in mind when you talk about refining your onboarding and training process is going to eliminate some of those on the front end. Think about, the first day of school, the first day of any type of job. There's always something that you're concerned about or something you're worried about. This is just a new version of some of those fears that they're going to go through.
Yeah, well, like the fear, like, where am I going to sit for lunch? Who's going to let me sit at their table, right?
However, how am I going to be a part of this team and that's kind of a big thing is, how am I truly going to be a part of this team if I'm just seeing their pictures pop up with that moving background of them being on a beach?
Yeah, there you go. So we come to our third theme today. We're talking about, as we get ready for budgets for next year and what do we need to support the senior management team and the board in their deliberations, so to speak. And I think we got to start, because I know our audience has everybody's not been around since 1930 something. But so what's so interesting what's so interesting in just the HR world or realm is that the stuff that we have in place really is here, and it's been here since pre-war, World War II. And you look at what the economy was like back then. We were manufacturing dominant. We had single owners of businesses, and they could mistreat their people. And 7 days a week and 12 hours a day was not unheard of. And the jobs back then in manufacturing, you were an apprentice. You had to learn the job. Then you mastered the job. And then every year as you mastered something, you moved higher in a salary range, or I paid you a nickel more an hour. So guess what we do? We built salary ranges in credit unions. Where'd they come from? Came from the 30s. Mm-hmm. So you think of a minimum, a midpoint, and a max, or a max on a salary range. What does minimum mean? It means apprentice. And then we have a midpoint. And then we have a max. So if midpoint means total skill acquisition, that the job, the procedurally how to do the job, you're great interacting with the member or your colleagues. And then I'm going to put a plan together that says it's going to take you 5 years to get to that. I question, how competent that employee is to be in front of members if it's going to take them 5 years to get there. But yet that's how we're structured, mm-hmm. So that's a concern. This is my personal theory, and one day it'll prove out, or people will laugh at it. It's a lot of times our HR practices have come from our sponsors, and it's actually come from the cooperative nature of what we do. So in a credit union cooperative, whether you have $1 in the credit union or $1 million, you get one vote. All members are equal. And we went years saying that. So when I do strategic plan facilitation, one of the first questions I ask a board that might be taking that position is, are all members equal? Absolutely. Even the ones that lie, steal, and cheat from us, are they the same? Well, not those guys.
About those. Okay.
So we do make distinctions. I mean, if you pay back your loan, you're part of the cooperative. If you don't, you hurt the cooperative. If you would use more of our electronic or digital services, it could be a lower cost for us to provide that, and then we could pass those savings on. So somehow we made the bridge from that to employees, and all employees are equal. And we know just by human nature that people are not necessarily going to offer the same horsepower and contribution to the organization. So as we go into next year, if you have a mentality that all employees are equal, everybody's going to get the same raise, or everybody's not going to get a raise next year, mm-hmm. we're sending a mixed message to our top 5%, top mm-hmm. 20%, top 50%, because Basically what it does is it rewards our okay and we need everybody, but it awards the okay and doesn't distinguish the great.
Yeah, and we've been talking about this for years, is really defining and characterizing your critical workforce and some of your top performers.
So what happens is, okay, well, that's not working in the retail environment or the credit environment. So we've tried point factor systems. We look at internal equity differently. So if you have a degree, you're worth more points than someone that doesn't have a degree. If you have 10 years of experience, you're worth more than somebody who has 5 years of experience. If you need to know a specific certification, you're worth more than somebody doesn't. But the challenge is when you extrapolate that and put that in the real world environment, a member could care less.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whether you're there 3 months or 3 years, the member says, just smile, get it right, do it fast. Don't make me come twice to the office to sign a paper because you didn't do it right the first time. So that's why we've tried to evolve or move some of our clients to much more pay for performance practices. Now, again, devil in the details of how we set metrics and things. But when especially next year, if we're going to treat everybody the same or have the same consequence, what I'm worried about is some of our top performers. What are we going to do with those folks? And it starts with, and we were guilty of this. In March, we were monitoring every big company, every retail establishment of what they were doing for hazard pay. We said, oh, we have to do something extra for people coming to work because we just didn't know what we were up against because it was a huge unknown. And then it was a great PR coup, right? Citibank, Bank of America were doing extra wages, promising, hourly increases. And then you got Amazons of the world and Kroger's and Rite Aid saying that they were going to do these supplement hazard pay. But the problem with that is all of those companies have taken it away now. Not all of them, but a lot of those big ones,
the majority,
the biggest players, and they're having to unwind that. And so this is a quote from somebody from a Rite Aid employee says, as long as we're wearing gloves, wearing masks, and social distancing, it seems obvious to me that we are still in hazardous conditions.
So where's my hazard pay?
And I got nothing. I go, yeah, you're kind of right. So the idea is that think how many people in the credit union space said, okay, we want to do hazard pay or do these things, but we didn't necessarily use the right semantics or couch it right. It was recognition for being on the front line. It was recognition for making sure members were taken care of. You were taking some risk, absolutely. But when we said hazard, how can you take that away? That was a one-way street. So we got some techniques we're thinking that are, we're going to be trying the next few months as people complain about this. And then we talked earlier about having the haves and have-nots and why, the front office or the golden children, the back office, they're forgotten. Why did they get hazard pay and I didn't? Those types of things. Well, guess what? We're trying to create DNA, synergy, collaboration, and our pay practice might have wedged it even further. So that's something that we've got to get back by the end of the year. So the big things that we're seeing, World at Work is something we've used for 20 years. I know a lot of you guys do it too, but their preliminary survey, they haven't done the survey, but they did a little email that said, hey, this is what we're finding. And they said, look, we're going to do, looks like 3% is going to be the median increase again for 2021, continuing, like this will be the 6th year of 3% in a row. That's great. But, we're doing a survey too, and we'll talk about that in a second. But these are the things I think the real world issues that we got to deal with by the end of the year. And the first is unwinding the hazard pay.
How do we couch that and how do we position that?
Yeah. And so the idea is that if we can get into our dialogue and into our narrative that, we are member focused, you are there for the member, people had access to their funds, they had access to credit, we've done our job, and now we've set up this next set of safety and soundness issues, okay? Whether it's appointments rather than, just dropping in, whether it's going to be drive-through or it's going to be a virtual process. We need to reinforce that, we listened, we heard, and we've accommodated or modified our practices to keep people safe and sound. It's so hard to take this away because if you use that word. So recognition is something we want to keep in the vernacular going forward. So one of the things we know a lot of people are going to contemplate said, hey, we're not making any money or we don't know what delinquency is going to be. HR has to step up and what are they going to do? And one of the things that's always kind of, is it hoist or voisted? What is it?
I'll take it with hoisted.
Is that a word? Is that a word?
We'll take it.
Okay.
It is today.
What I'm trying to say is that they dump it on us. Okay. And what we're seeing is okay, no raises, freeze our salary bands. So, if you went to MBA, course 101, the two cardinal sins in any business and things are bad or crisis is to stop marketing and stop your HR practices.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you do those things, you just keep sinking and you just can't dig out. So the idea is that how do we get money in the right people's hands? How do we communicate if we do have to freeze things? What's going to happen? So when we freeze a salary band, it's kind of weird. On paper, it looks like high five. We're helping the organization save money or maintain costs. But in reality, hiring employees is just the analogy I always use is real estate. What's your house worth? What you bought it for? No. What you think you can sell it for? No. What did the last 3 houses on your block sell for? Mm-hmm. That's what your house is worth. What's a teller worth? What your salary range says it is from 2 years ago? No. What a person makes now that's in the job? No. We use that a lot, but we shouldn't. It's like if your minimum is $16 and you're committed to paying people at the bottom and and nobody comes except for $16.25, guess what your new house is worth? $16.25. So whether you freeze the bands or not, in reality, most practices or people are up with the market. So be careful of just that absolute phrase because it might put you in the hole in terms of getting new people in or refreshing or replenishing the ranks. And then we create the situation of compression.
Mm-hmm.
And the classic thing all HR people hate to hear, but they hear it a lot, is what do I have to do? Quit and get rehired to get a raise around here? Because now our new hires are making more than them, and that doesn't make sense intuitively. I've been here 3 years. Why are the new people? So if we don't have a commitment to keep people moving through the range, then we have a problem. But that's why we think the variable pay is so important, because
Mm-hmm.
we can create vertical career paths, horizontal career path, not vertical career paths. So you can tell somebody that is really motivated by the money that, well, look, I can only make X, I'm maxed out, or there's no raises this year. But if you have the variable piece, you'll say, you might want to be the best paid people in your local community for this, but only in those times where you're the best performer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So instead of saying, and we get this a lot. I know HR folks, you see the warning sign too, or the flag of, can I, Jeff's the HR person and I'm the manager that really wants to, somebody's redlined or at the top of the range. And what do? I say, hey, I redid the job description. This job is so much more important than it was.
Get
Friday.
This reevaluated.
So could you repoint this or price it again? Because this person, and obviously we see through that, in some cases it's true, but in a lot of cases it's just because they've run out of runway, mm-hmm. so to speak. So the idea, if you have the variable pay piece and you're willing to use that as a tool, you can solve a lot of those compression issues, so to speak.
So the salary remains the same, so to speak, but that performance piece that's added on top of that gives them that opportunity to increase their earning potential.
You think of just a superstar, you think they're going to be excited with a 2% cost of living versus a 2.1. Mm-hmm. No, it's the recognition piece that goes with it that we hope we can continue on. So we're looking at, committing to keeping your ranges competitive, to keep your system competitive. Don't give up on merit increases, but don't think about it in the old way. Everybody gets the same thing. Maybe you partition into different groups, and I'll show you that in a second. If you're doing gain share, keep doing gain share. Even if you don't pay out gain share, and there's a consequence for not generating the revenue to pay gain share, keep the gain share plan.
Mm-hmm.
Because what we don't want is big boys and girls. In good times we share, and in times that are tough, we all share the pain, so to speak.
Shoulder the burden.
But you spent so much time on the narrative to get people in the mindset of that's how we deliver pay. And then you rip the Band-Aid off this year or next year, you got to start over. Because think, a third of your workforce might be new. They haven't, the pre-COVID, post-COVID, they'll have different pieces of baggage, so to speak, to go through that. And then obviously when we look at recognition, making sure in the back office we're getting the proper recognition. Even if you're a pay for performance and you're really pro sales and service, make sure that you're looking at how the internal customer is served and recognizing this. And then finally, cost of living is this interesting topic. And I could talk 3 hours of it.
A whole webinar for this particular topic.
Well, you look at Facebook and Amazon entertaining the idea they're going to let people work from anywhere, right? Because they're engineers and they're, not their delivery folks, fulfillment folks. I'm talking about, the I guess we call it software, the software and those types of businesses. So what they're saying is, well, if you're in Seattle, which is an extremely high cost of living, and you're going to go to Idaho and it's 20% cheaper than the national average to have a cabin somewhere on a lake, and you're having this great quality of life. But we're probably going to reduce your salary 20%. They're going to say no.
Mm-hmm.
So they haven't thought that through yet to see how that plays out. But here's my angle. If I'm in Seattle, I'm going to go to Tokyo, London, which has the most ridiculous cost of living in the world, and ask for a 20% raise, right?
I think the 30% today is going to be good.
So be careful if you take that approach that you're going to be willing to modify. We've already had clients come to us of saying they want to bring somebody, they don't want to relocate them yet, they're going to pay them, but the person's willing to take a discount cost of living. It's both ways. And so think of zones as opposed to absolutes. Mm-hmm. It's okay to say maybe plus or minus 5%. The index will do a little premium, more than 10% will do a second premium, but don't be trying to match city pairs. I think nobody's going to win that situation.
No, I agree. I think it's going to be one of those situations that we have to look at the cases, but we don't want to do the individual cases too much. If you're spending too much time on that one person, that one thing, it's not going to work out as a benefit. You're not going to actually receive that high-end thing. So on the other side of things,
this is a shameless plug for
shameless plug.
Please help us out. What's very cool about our client base, and I can brag on it, is we never really extend survey dates. I know all of you participate in salary surveys around the country for different reasons, and don't you always get third reminder? We've extended the deadline because we didn't have enough participants. We don't have to do that because you guys participate. However, because this is something we've never done before, just want to make the awareness out there is if you're going, and do we have a link?
Yep. We're going to have Eric put the link there it is in the chat box. So that'll give you a direct connection to that. So if you just click on that, it'll take you to the survey. Okay. We'll also put that link in the follow-up email that'll come. So just an opportunity. If you haven't taken that survey yet, please do so.
Our commitment to the industry is better data, makes better results, makes better peace of mind. And so this is a part where you can kind of do your part. And again, we do independent research. It's not influenced by any trade group or any organization or any ulterior motive other than to make sure we got the best data and we self-fund this. So,
mm-hmm. And the more data we can gather during this unprecedented time, the better off we can be, because there's not too many of them that are going to be specialized and focused in just the credit union industry. So we're going to be able to provide both. You get the full perspective of the national industry of just everybody that's going, as well as just something that's going to be specifically to the credit unions.
So kind of building on this case of why we can't truly suggest to shut down everything or stall things for years. Your top performers expect, they use pay as a scorecard. If you look at a classic sales competency, like a car salesman, if there's 10 salesmen and you're going to pay $100 a car, and the number 10 on the list is not working here. There's this weird motivation, but that energy works in that environment. And I think that's why sometimes we get not the best car deals out there, right? But the point of the story is, it's not that you're the top salesman and I'm going to pay you $100 a car. It's the recognition that you're the top salesman. So remember, we're in the business of reward and recognition. So if we take some of our tools away, we haven't taken away our recognition tool. So again, if we have to shut down programs or modify programs or dilute programs they've done in the past, don't give up on the recognition piece. And so these are some of the things that we'd suggest you look at. Now, remember, this goes against the grain. Everything you've been taught that all people should be created equal. All pay plans should be equal and all employees should have the same opportunity. We're going to this thing is if we have limited budgets, we want to make sure that the top folks are the ones that get the first recognition when it comes to compensation. Okay. So I'm just going to quickly go through this list. We're going a little long. I don't want to rush this. So if you need to drop off, that's okay, but we'll keep this on the recording. Okay. Sometimes a technique we see used is use a two pool system. So maybe for the top 20% of your workforce, and you can identify that as through a performance evaluation score, or use your management team to kind of rank their folks. Make 5% the budget for that group. And then for the 80%, use 2.5%, and you get to 3%. The math works. So if you said across the board, everybody's getting 3%, we're not going to do evaluations this year, we're not going to be recognized, we're just going to give everybody the same kind of cost of living adjustment or whatever, who do we hurt?
Mm-hmm. You know, your top performers.
Your recognition of your top performance is diluted so poorly in that example. So the second bullet, set the bar higher for merit increases. So if you have a merit increase matrix, so to speak, so if your scale is 1 to 5 and 5 is awesome and 1 is not so hot and 3 is the minimal expectation, well, maybe you go deeper into the not pay segment of, maybe if you're above midpoint and you're at 3, there's not a raise this year. You need to be 4 and 5 to get something this year. And again, it's just shifting those dollars to the top performers. Another thing could be repetition. So that third bullet of saying, maybe for our top 20%, we look at doing a mid-year and end of year, or if you're on anniversary dates, anniversary and half dates. I have 2 daughters and we celebrate happy half
birthdays.
We do. But my first one came premature and she was in the hospital for 6 weeks, and first time parents, we had no clue what to deal with this. And, they made it 6 months. We go, here, we're going to have a cupcake for this. And unfortunately that became, the oldest one is now 28 and still wants a happy birthday cupcake. I
hadn't heard of that before, but my wife is the exact same way. Okay. She says, you realize it's my half birthday today?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Well, it's out there. So again, it's the recognition, and people love recognition. So the idea is that if we're going to split that money up or have a limited pool, how do we get it in their hands? So frequency can help, especially for our younger generations too. The longer you wait between them doing something awesome and the reward, there's a disconnect. Mm-hmm. So that's why we love monthly and quarterly pay for performance plans, is because we can get recognition in their hands a lot faster. So discretionary bonus could be an option where you take 5% of your budget and give those to your top performers, or you say, hey, let's, take 1% of payroll or whatever and make sure we get it in their hands. The idea of retention bonuses for some of your IT folks, your mortgage people, you're not the only one having great mortgage activity now. And people want to poach your folks because they actually know how to do something from A to Z. Mm-hmm. We've got to protect that skill set. And then finally, the idea of lump sums. Now, we used to reserve those maybe for our red line employees. So if you were maxed out, you didn't get a raise, but you got a lump sum, and maybe we did that as recognition. So maybe there's an idea that we can do that for additional folks as well, not just for the red line. So if you want to talk more about those, we're happy to do that. But I just want to kind of set the theme today of one size does not fit all. Trying to do everything for all employees equally at this point, whether they're a top performer or a moderate performer, could actually hurt you in terms of your productivity of your superstars and your gifted folks.
I think you put it so succinctly last time during our symposium. You said the unnecessary need to be egalitarian, and it kind of spawns from the culture that's there, but making sure that the employees are feeling rewarded is going to be an important part of this whole piece.
Everything we've talked about today is set up to be pro-member, if you think about it. Everything that we put in place in terms of getting the right skill sets in the right place to deliver the right service. And if you're in a fulfillment job or a back office job, to make sure you understand what you have to do to make sure there's a great member experience. We want to make sure that happens. So with that said, we've come to the end. So
it was a long road to get here. A lot of topics to cover. Thank you so much for staying with us. We'll go ahead and open it up to, if you have any questions, please feel free to go ahead. We'll also put my information up there. If you would like a copy of this presentation, go ahead and send me an email. My name's Jeff Rock. You can send it to jeff@dhilton.com, and I'll go ahead and send you a copy of this presentation. But if you have any questions, go ahead and chat in. We'll try to get to those now. Looks like we may have explained things pretty darn well, John.
Okay.
So far, so good.
I know we ran up against the top of the hour, and I know that we're so appreciative that people gave us the time today, and hopefully there's 1 or 2 nuggets that you can take back to your team. If you do want to talk offline, because everybody obviously has a unique situation when it comes to how their business is performing and how their culture is dealing with this, we're absolutely happy to spend the time with anyone. So Jeff or I are available when you need us. But if that's the case,
Fantastic. All right, guys, thank you so much for participating. Like I said, we're going to be posting a recording of this webinar up on our website in about 3 to 5 days. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to help you out in any way we possibly can. But otherwise, everybody maintain safe distance and all that good stuff. Please remain safe and healthy. We look forward to talking with you again soon. Thank you so much.
Take care, everyone. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.